And welcome to this election night New World Order special. Now, I should say the polls haven't closed at the point of filming. We haven't seen an exit poll, so we don't know what's going to happen. But I suspect the Tories are going to win. It's been such a long election campaign, I don't think they should even show the election night coverage. I think they should just show Die Hard on every channel. Show Die Hard and dub over the occasional surprising result. Well, John McLean, Labour have lost Norwich South. It's been a chaotic election from the Conservatives. Started with the NHS computer system going down. Some records might have been lost forever. But the good news is, I'm HIV negative again, ladies. The Tory manifesto had some incredibly unpopular policies. The most unpopular one, obviously, was this idea that if you're a pensioner, you get dementia, you might lose your house. That's the most unpopular policy that you could come up with for pensioners. For pensioners, that's like putting VAT on racism. And it amazes me that pensioners won't just acquiesce into having a Conservative government. They'll actually go out and vote for it. These people will crawl along the pavement to go and vote themselves out of their own house. Theresa May has looked incredibly uncomfortable. She always looks like she's about to cough up an owl pellet. But rest assured, no matter how uncomfortable she's been in this election, her victory parade will be like Mad Max Fury Road. Jeremy Corbyn hasn't done too well in Scotland because Scottish people don't trust anyone who looks old but still has teeth. I think it's going to be sad watching Corbyn getting beaten, isn't it? It's not going to be like watching Ed Miliband lose. It's going to be more like watching Aslan dying in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. Do you know what my perfect result would be? If Corbyn got enough seats to form a coalition and Sinn Féin had to come and take their seats at Westminster. That'd be like the end of a movie, wouldn't it? Well, you might think that I don't have enough votes to pass my budget, but ladies and gentlemen, the IRA. The Queen's speech gets written by the IRA and she has to deliver it through a balaclava. UKIP have tried to reposition themselves because they got what they wanted. They got out of the EU. Nobody cares about your other positions. It's like hearing ISIS's position on wheelie bins. UKIP say they're worried about low-skilled migrant workers. Right? They don't want low-skilled migrants coming to Britain. Yeah, wait till after Brexit. Wait till you see the British people who've been living in Europe who have to come back here. Wait till you see the skill sets that they're bringing to the table. My skills include being able to ask for the bill in Spanish and armed robbery. Tim Farron's a kind of trendy vicar character, isn't he? OK, everybody, let's meet down the youth club tomorrow. We're having a workshop on how to act normal around gays. Came out, didn't he, at the start of the election, Farron said, he eventually said, I don't think gay sex is a sin, because he had to say that, because he was being asked about it every single day. He was just getting to the stage when he was going to be asked about specific acts of gay sex. Daily Express here, Mr. Farron. What's your views on rimming? What about felching, Farron? The public wants answers. OK, let's go on with the show. So, here's how the show works. I give an opinion about the news and we decide if I'm right or wrong. Joining me to discuss all the issues surrounding the election, please welcome Sarah Pascoe and Miles Jupp. Good to see you both.
Hello.
Have you been keeping up with the election? Been enjoying it?
I feel sick. I feel sick in every cell of my being. My granddad died last week, So I had to spend time with my family, and what's really awful is that everything. No, you know how look. It's obviously it's sad. Obviously it's sad. It's a funeral. But it's really odd. It used to be that when an old person died, you said things like, "Oh, they had a good innings," and if a young person died, that was much sadder. But now when an old person dies, it's even worse because they don't get to see the Brexit they wanted so desperately.
Miles, do you feel that this is the very last moment of hope?
this election or this, what we're doing now?
This moment in the show.
I think it could be. I think at the moment, sort of, say for instance, Labour Party supporters have been sort of swept along by a kind of optimism in the last 2 weeks, and if it doesn't go their way, there will be actual sort of heartbreak, I suppose. Whereas if the Conservatives win, they'll be gleeful and... I think they won't have costed it, but I think smashing hope is one of their manifesto policies. So either way, that will happen. Yeah.
OK, tonight I'll be making 2 propositions based on today's election. First up, the political system hates us. Joining us to discuss all this, please welcome playwright Lucy Prebble. Lucy, you look like you might have some hope. Do you still have some hope?
Oh, no. I'm suffering from democratic fatigue quite a lot. All this democracy is making me sort of understand the rise of fascism a little bit. Because if we're going to have right-wing authoritarians in charge, if we're going to have that, then I'd rather it was imposed on us a bit, rather than knowing that everyone had voted for it, you know?
Now, for old people who voted in this election, this will be their last opportunity to vote. And for young people who voted, this will be their last opportunity to vote. Politics is a sort of class warfare. A political class engaged in arms deals, profiteering and corruption, ranged against the public who have been educated out of any understanding of their situation and trained to despise each other. And that's how we end up with Theresa May. Theresa May is the first Nazi in history who can't get the trains to run on time. And she's authoritarian at heart. This is the key to her. This is why she wants rid of human rights legislation. This is why she brought in the surveillance bill. You know, that I think is the key to her permanently appalled expression. You know, she always looks completely appalled. It's like she's just seen my internet history. So, this election has focused on the leaders rather than the parties they represent. Theresa May became an MP in 1997, just a few weeks after the death by shooting of the notorious B.I.G. It is some comfort to the family of Biggie that he never knew that Theresa May even existed. Throughout the campaign, Theresa May has carefully managed her terrible public image. Here she is, stumbling and trying to buy time whilst thinking of an answer that will do her career the least amount of damage.
What's the naughtiest thing you ever did?
Oh, goodness me. Well, I suppose the... gosh, do you know, I'm not quite sure.
Well, there must have been a moment.
Nobody's ever perfectly behaved, are they? I mean, you know, I have to confess, when me and my friends sort of used to run through the fields of wheat, the farmers weren't too pleased about that.
You know, if you're going to answer that question, just say the real worst thing you've ever done. You know, I killed a tramp with a hammer. What of it?
That's not the worst thing she's ever done. I think that's what's so great about asking that question to someone with no moral compass. Like a normal person is thinking, well, I used to cheat at Monopoly and I once tried it on with my mum's boyfriend. But she's thinking, shall I tell them about how I find human rights an imposition, an inconvenience, or selling arms to the Saudis? What will I choose? I know, I'll pretend I'm Peter Rabbit.
I think it's quite a dishonest answer as well, because I don't think she even thinks it's naughty. I think what she's trying to do is conjure up an idea of a Britain from the past that's very rural and idyllic. I think that's what it's about, really.
Well, she does feel some empathy, but for wheat.
She loves repeating these little alliterative phrases as well, the strong and stable. And the other one she keeps going on about is the coalition of chaos that came up a lot in the debate. And you sort of think, OK, so she's saying that if you elect anyone else, there'll be this coalition of chaos, which sounds amazing. It sounds like a Marvel film you really want to see.
that kind of thing, like, obviously, most people engage with politics in such a brief way, like, including myself. So actually, those kind of phrases work really, really well.
Yeah.
Like, everyone does know the strong and stable thing. And actually, lots of politicians have done that. Like, Winston Churchill used to always say, we'll fight them on the beaches, but once it made sense. all the other times, they were like, shall we give back the Elgin marbles? We'll fight them on the beaches.
Some of the dreams that Martin Luther King told people about were disgusting. They have been buried by history.
My father was naked and riding on the back of a Labrador.
I think that's why the alliteration thing is so much easier, isn't it? There's a thing that's there. If she starts panicking, if she gets halfway through a sentence, because she's not very good at suppressing what she actually thinks, and you can see like sometimes just fear in her eyes or whatever, or sometimes she thinks the correct thing to do to being criticised is
Yeah.
whatever, and then she's got one of these things, so she can sort of go, strong and stable. Do you want a coalition of chaos, or do you want us, a bunch of bastards? Does that work? These are what we need.
Now, many politicians found themselves being hounded by the same question over and over again. Here's Jeremy Corbyn defiantly refusing to answer an incredibly persistent audience.
You said that
would you use it as second use? Or would you allow North Korea or some idiot in Iran to bomb us and then say, oh, we better start talking? You'd be too late.
No, of
You're
course
going to
not.
have to do it first, mate.
No, of course not. Of course I would not do that.
You would allow them to do it.
Of course not. Because
how would you stop them?
that is why I made the point a short time ago about the need for President Obama's agreement with Iran to be upheld. It's quite important, actually, and also to promote disarmament in Korea. That is difficult, I appreciate, but...
Impossible.
Well...
It's impossible.
All right, ask the Chinese what they're trying to do.
You up there? Yeah, you're asking a massive wish when you've got one of the biggest arsenals by your side. I'd rather have it and not use it than not have it at all, especially in today's day and age.
Do you want to comment on that?
It was quite a frustrating show, that, because the people of York were obsessed with having a nuclear exchange with Iran, which doesn't have nuclear weapons. I was quite proud of him for sticking to his guns, but at the same time, I thought he could have gone, yeah, I would use Trident, and then just winked.
Yeah.
And then when they said, did you wink there? He could have gone, no.
Of course I would not do that.
I don't know, I've got some sympathy for the beetroot-faced men in that audience who were so keen, because I kind of think with Jeremy Corbyn, he does want you to know that he's got such integrity. And I do honestly sort of think that that's the problem a little bit with him, is that people think that he's putting his sense of integrity above national security a little bit. Because he could just lie, couldn't he? Or he could even go, I don't know, because anything could happen. Aliens could come and we could need to fire it into space. So he doesn't really know, but he sort of wants to impose on you what his own morality is.
I sort of think they should keep Trident, but just never update it. Because what's more threatening than a really rusty old nuke?
Yeah.
And you're saying, this isn't going to be a precision-guided thing. We've just pulled this out of the shed.
Yeah.
We've forgotten what it does. It might go off at face height like a backyard firework. It's a bank holiday and we've been drinking.
But the British people are obsessed with this, though.
Yeah.
I think, you know, if you remember, one of the first things Theresa May did when she became Prime Minister was she stood up in the House of Commons and she said that thing about, I am personally prepared to kill 100,000 men, women and children, you know, if needs be. I mean, maybe the question was about school lunches. Yeah. She was just which was weird.
She was just trying to get sponsored for Comic Relief.
Yeah.
Anyway, whatever you think about Lib Dem leader Tim Farron, you can't say he didn't embrace the election photo op, even when they seemed desperate or odd. Let's have a look at the highlights of some of his coverage. Drifting along aimlessly, not really making any impression on the ground. It's on a bus powered by shame. He has a key skill for any top politician, being able to bake tarts.
We're going to get you to do a little bit of speed chess. Do you think you can do that and answer the questions?
I mean, not well.
No, well, no one's going to judge you on that.
Checkmate.
So is this about Brexit? Is this going to be about Brexit?
Look at that.
So I'm there. I'm doing,
Oh my God, you are checkmate.
There's no way out of that. Yeah. I'm good at pop quizzes.
I like when he's in the bus, he's in a rear-facing seat as well, just as a sort of, sort of metaphor for this campaign. I've no idea where we're going. All I can see is the chaos and havoc we leave behind.
He doesn't seem like he wants to win the election. He seems like he wants to get all of his Cub Scout badges for sort of arts and crafts and hovercrafting, and the badge for saying gay sex is a sin, the badge for saying gay sex isn't a sin. You know, all of the badges.
The Duke of Edinburgh's award.
Yeah.
It's probably why the Duke of Edinburgh retired, so he didn't have to meet the fucker. Now, someone who had good reason to avoid scrutiny during the campaign was Jeremy Hunt. Here's some unrelenting footage of him on a hospital visit.
Mr Hunt, how does it feel to be demolishing the NHS?
Hello.
How does it feel, all those people dying because of your actions? You're closing our hospital. How have you got the cheek to come here when you're closing our hospital? I think the names they call you are right, Mr Hunt. Your name is clearly misspelled. Let's hope you never need an A&E, Mr Hunt. Any other person in the world, I'd help with that.
I like to think that was the voice of his conscience. Yeah. He was in hospital having it removed.
I like the way that he's pretending to be normal. You know, that thing of, like, you just keep chatting and you sort of try and keep that demeanour up. But then I thought maybe he just thinks that's what the world's like. You know, maybe he thinks that everywhere... A bit like, you know, wherever the Queen goes, she thinks it smells of fresh paint because they paint wherever she goes. Maybe Jeremy Hunt just thinks everyone in the world kind of, like, walks around going, wanker! Why did you ruin the NHS? And when he goes to dinner parties, he's like, this new thing people are saying, resign. It's a new thing. Is that on a show or something?
Well, I honestly think this is the last election campaign where the politicians will even go and campaign. I think it will be like digital avatars in the next election. They'll send a digital avatar around the country and they'll dub over the occasional local reference. It's a pleasure to be here in Doncaster. I sympathise with your local concerns about unemployment. I enjoy your local cuisine of pie and chips and methadone. OK, so, in conclusion, the political system may hate us more than we hate it, but let's look on the bright side. We all need to take a moment to forget politics, look into our partner's eyes and take solace. Take solace from the fact that on a daily basis we manage to suppress the hate we have for the person we have decided to try and spend the rest of our lives with. We hate the way they laugh, the way they blink, the way they eat, the way they sleep, the way they breathe, the way they exist. And if we can live with that hate day in, day out, how hard can it be to stifle the hate we have for our political system? So, chin up, everybody. Thanks to Lucy Pebble! OK, on to the next proposition. The media is a huge obstacle to meaningful democracy. Joining us to discuss this, please welcome Mr. Nish Kumar. How are you doing, Nish? Have you been following this election?
I'm having the best time of my life, Frankie. I love elections. I hope we have one every year, which I think we will. This is just what we do at this time of year now. Indie Ref, election, Brexit, election, Indie Ref and the Temple of Doom. Like, it's just going to keep on... It's just going to keep on rolling.
Yes. I like your positivity, Nish.
Yeah. I'm here to be a ray of sunshine. Democracy!
Now, this campaign showed us that elections are an exchange of rhetorical artillery, and the lack of engagement from voters is something the media is complicit in. Theresa May can be interviewed by Paxman the week of the Manchester bomb and not be asked how the bomber got to Libya and back on her watch while she was Home Secretary. Instead, we got questions about the Falklands War. while we are selling Saudi Arabia bombs to drop on Yemen. The media is complicit in the whole thing, from cropping shots to create the scenes the parties want, to printing coverage that's sometimes little more than a party press release. And this is, you know, what we've been talking about, the whole kind of catchphrase nature of the election. Look, saying strong and stable all the time isn't a strong and stable thing to do. If someone just had the words strong and stable as their Tinder bio, that's someone who's teetering on the verge of a nervous breakdown. That's someone who's facing a work disciplinary for hiding a rifle in a stationery cupboard. That's somebody who's dropped their carpets off to cash converter because they need money to buy heroin for their dog. As they're cooking up a shot for their baffled labradoodle, they see their own face reflected in the spoon and it's mouthing the words strong and stable. With the support of the entire media, how could Theresa May have lost this election? Theresa May could have taken a shit on the cenotaph through a wreath of poppies and then dragged her arse like a dog with worms down the length of Pall Mall, and the worst that could have happened is that she'd have to form a coalition. Yes, do you find this? Do you find the campaign coverage, this kind of, I find it very false and kind of stultifying?
Yeah, it feels like more than ever the media has not actually engaged. It's been very passive. It's very sort of observing the process rather than actually interrogating. And then we had this kind of spectacle of these debates that weren't really debates because they weren't in the same room, and it was quite a hollow experience. And it's a bit like watching a porn movie where instead of two people having sex, they just stand in separate rooms and masturbate consecutively. And like, at the end you're a bit like, I've still got an erection, but nothing's really been solved here.
There's that thing, isn't there, where you sort of feel it's like they need to convey more complexity in what they're saying. So you have these messages like coalition of chaos or strong and stable, and then you sort of need to go, well, it's not as simple as that, and give people a more informed view. But the minute you do that, you're in a medium where it's impossible to go, well, it's actually more sophisticated than that, because you've got to cut straight to the next.
I just don't think people do actually want that much information. I think most people just want to grab a couple of things and talk about them angrily after they've had a large white wine. Like, I'm just judging this on my family. Everyone in my family is Tory, and their reasons are really interesting. Like my sister, I said to her about all of the cuts and things that are happening, things that mean a lot to me in terms of the rape crisis centres don't have funding anymore, women's refuges don't have funding anymore. And she went, well, actually, did you know 75% of the women in those refuges are pretending that their boyfriend's hitting them so they've got a second place to live? Yeah? That is what happens if you don't fund education. She's a teacher.
Who's having a second home in a rape shelter?
Maybe it's near a beach.
So, during the campaign, the media accidentally gave us an insight into its true priorities. Take a look at Nicola Sturgeon being interviewed by Sky News.
Whilst you can blame the Conservatives for imposing that austerity, why not take a reaction yourself by raising that money through taxation of the most rich?
Well, as you've just indicated,
First Minister,
we are considering...
I am extremely sorry to interrupt you. We do have to interrupt, though. Theresa May has just started speaking. Perhaps you could hang on for us and we can get your reaction.
I'm taking absolutely nothing for granted. I'm going to be continuing to campaign across the whole of the country.
See, that's the whole media thing for me now. It's all about symbolism, right? So he's gone from an actual conversation to a symbolic event where Theresa May has stood outside a bus. There's nobody even there, so there's just photographers. They're in a lay-by somewhere. She's shouting nothing into a hedge. And they've cut away to do that. We can watch what happens at the end of the shot.
They could easily let in a coalition of chaos led by Jeremy Corbyn. She said that was a real possibility, so they mustn't take anything for granted. She urged people to vote for her and her team, and a vote for her and her team is a vote to lock in economic security.
I wish they'd carried on filming, because, you know, just behind the bus there was a wheat field. Happy as Larry.
The peak of cosiness between politicians and the media during the campaign was this embarrassing appearance by Theresa and Philip May on the One Show. Let's have a look.
When you've experienced so much of each other's lives, because you met when you were so young, and all of this has happened to you, you must feel like you're almost one, as opposed to individuals.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I suppose it's...
Well,
but I mean, I think the point is we're still individuals, but we know each other really well.
It's sort of like they don't understand normal conversation. So when he goes, it's sort of like you're one person. They go, how does the human know?
I like the way they chorus, we are individuals.
But if he's an electoral asset, I mean, he looks like, you know, like when you see like a baby bird that's fallen out of a nest. You need to stamp on it before a cat gets it.
You don't have to. You don't have to. I didn't hate them in this interview, but I did hate the stuff about the boy jobs and girl jobs.
Oh, yeah.
Like the idea that a woman can't take the bins out. And as a woman who lives alone in a house full of rubbish, will someone come and take my bins out?
The thing is that the One Show, you know, that's kind of the format of it, but I thought it was more of a problem that, you know, certain newspapers and places where you expect some actual analysis to happen had such an unquestioning view of Theresa May. I mean, now described her as, like, finally a Prime Minister who'll be honest, but she lied about the fact that there was going to be an election, and she campaigned for Remain, and now she's pushing for a Brexit so aggressive Pret a Manger is going to have to change its name to Lunch In It. Like... of all the things you would praise her for, honesty is baffling.
I mean, that thing where most of that interview is them talking about going on a walking holiday in Snowdonia. I think possibly they go there because she mates with a tethered dragon. That's at the top of Snowdonia.
Somebody needs to say it, Frankie.
And maybe when you see it uncomfortable in interviews, someone is attacking the dragon. Her soul is in the dragon, and she's trying to, you know, I run through fields of wheat, but really she's thinking, save the dragon.
I would love it if you'd been in the audience for one of the leaders' debates and been like, look, this is all very well. What's happening with the dragon?
What if some idiot in North Korea or Iran attacks our dragon?
What would you do then, Mr. Corbyn? Would you protect our dragon?
I would, yes. You wouldn't. You wouldn't.
Anyway, it's important candidates catch voters' attention. Here's one Conservative candidate's creative method of getting their message across with a shifting gear towards the end.
Hello, my name's Greg Knight. I'm the Conservative candidate for East Yorkshire. There's a general election on the 8th of June, and I hope, if you live in East Yorkshire, that you'll vote for me. When you vote in an election, you're doing two things. You're choosing who is your local representative, but you're also choosing a Prime Minister. I hope you'll vote for me and support Theresa May. We want a strong and stable government, not a coalition of chaos led by Jeremy Corbyn.
You'll get accountability with Conservative delivery. Make sure this time you get it right. Vote for Greg Knight.
What are the words in the song? Was the first line of that song, we're cutting disability?
It's sort of hard not to watch that and suddenly be able to understand those mothers in the 1950s who looked at Elvis and saw him as such a threat to their daughters. I mean, that guy, he's just fucking sex. I think it's dangerous. I think what he's doing there is it's provocative and it's deliberately provocative, OK? Even at the beginning, it starts the door... It could start and he'd be there, but it doesn't. When it starts, the door's empty. Oh, there's an empty... Who's going to come into the office? Well, I don't know who it's going to be. Oh, it's Greg Knight. It's Greg Knight. Oh, that's a surprise.
Have a VHS made of that and sent to every young person in the constituency. There is a slight loophole for the media where they're allowed to be properly difficult with minor parties and far-right wingnuts. Have a look at what happened when UKIP's Paul Nuttall announced he was standing in a town he had no prior links to.
You should be thrilled at what we're going to do next, which is a little game, just to test how well you know the seat that you're going to stand in. Oh, Boston or Loston. All you've got to do is look at the picture on the screen and say whether or not this is a picture of Boston or somewhere else in the country. Here's the first one. What do you reckon? Boston or not?
Boston, I'd say. Am I
Sorry.
correct?
That's Aylesbury Town Centre.
Is that Aylesbury? OK.
I can see the market. You might be distracted by that, but...
Oh, come on.
OK, let's have a look at the next one. What about this one? How about this? Are you looking at Boston or another place in the country?
I would say Boston.
I'm sorry, that's not Boston.
OK.
I'm sorry, that's not Boston. That is...
But hang on, Sophie. I mean...
How about this one?
That's Boston.
That is Boston, yes. Correct.
At least there's like some kind of critical appraisal of the leader of the UK Independence Party, which sort of breaks with the tradition of the last decade. And if that had been Farage, it would have been, is this a picture of you being a complete legend or a partial legend? Like, they had such a boner for him for years, and I'm delighted that now that party is getting... Anyway, I have certain opinions about UKIP. And they have certain opinions about me.
Well, I suppose what the ideal would be is if you did something relevant, so you had Farage on there and you did, like, deport or not. And you said, well, it might just be a tan, but who cares? Deport.
I will host that game show.
There's also a sort of, like, it's an unnecessary item. If it was an item about the homogenisation of English town centres or whatever, that would be a completely valid approach, but as it is, it's just a waste of everyone's fucking time.
OK, so our media may be an obstacle to democracy, but I promise you it is not an insurmountable one. I can promise you that it will change and that life will become fairer and your children will have a brighter future. And I can promise you this because promises are meaningless. Anyone can promise anything because the days of being held to account for promises are over. Nothing will get better. This, now, is as good as it's ever going to be. This, I mean, look at it. This, what a fucking mess. Your children's futures are fucked. But I do promise you this. I do not care about your or your children's future. That is a promise you can believe. Well, that's the end of the show. Thanks to my guests, Sarah Pascoe, Miles Jupp, Nish Kumar. But before I go, I want to leave you with some words. Tonight they're going to be in the style of UKIP leader Paul Nuttall, in what I hope will be an uncannily accurate impression. Hi, I'm Paul Nuttall from UKIP. To many of you, I probably look like at some point in life I've had to pull a dangerous dog off my mum. You've made an instant value judgment about me because my neck is the same width as my head. And I look like I might give you unsolicited advice when you were playing a fruit machine. Most of the failed politicians from this election will end up with some kind of directorship. Not me. In 6 weeks' time, I'll be breeding staffies and driving a coach. Of course, people say that I actually look like a male model, fronting a campaign urging women not to leave their drinks unattended. And yet, my father was actually a South American magic realist novelist. It was a tricky upbringing in many ways. I'd ask him if I could go to a friend's birthday party, and he'd launch into a long digression about a pirate who fell in love with a seal. Dad never stopped talking, except when it was time for my bedtime story, which he always read silently to himself. Of course, I rebelled. I created my own fantasy life to rival my father's. Perhaps I just wanted to stand for something simple, to stand up for the sort of people who put a big St. George's flag in their garden during a football championship and then never take it down. Until it gets so dirty from petrol fumes that it looks like they support ISIS. When the general election was called, I phoned my father in excitement, but he seemed subdued. Paul, I have something to tell you, he announced in his foreign accent. You are not a real man. You're a character in a story I am writing. I had conceived of you as an ironic commentary on British masculinity. He then announced that he had created my flagship policy of having women examined for female genital mutilation as a piece of satire, as there is nothing more thoroughly British than going on holiday and coming back with a damaged vagina. I started to worry that I was indeed simply some kind of racist Pinocchio. So am I real or not? Who knows? I have the strangest dreams sometimes. Sometimes I dream I'm a teenager who's suffocating in a shipping container. I feel complete empathy, a oneness with the universe. And I fight that feeling with everything I've got. And I wake up, and with a full English breakfast and some strong aftershave, I feel as real as I'll ever need to. Good night, everybody.
No